Welcome. This is another grammar video for you, and trust me, this unit 26 is really easy. We're going to talk about habits and routines. After that, we're going to talk about responsibilities and how we express that in action as part of a responsibility at work or at home, for example. So let's start with habits and routines. And because there are different ways to speak about an old habit and a current habit, we first will focus on those differences. In both cases, we use used to. But the difference is that when you want to express a current habit, you use is, are, or am before used to. That way, people will understand that you have that habit today. Now, if you want to talk about an old habit you had in the past and you do not have it currently, you do not use is, are, or am. You only use used to. There are a few more details to this, but you see that everything will make sense in the end. Let's make some examples to better understand this. Let's talk about habits we had in the past that we don't have now. After that, compare it with habits that you have now. Let's talk about drinks that we used to have when we were 5 years old and drinks that we normally have now.
When I was 5 years old, I used to drink milk with chocolate, but now I'm used to drinking coffee.
Analyzing this example you just saw, we can notice that when talking about the drink we used to drink in the past, we say, I used to drink. And when we're talking about the drink we drink today, we say, I am used to drinking. The am is to represent that this is a current habit, and the ing is to represent that this habit continues. See? That's pretty logical, isn't it? Now let's continue making some simple examples, always comparing habits we had in the past with habits we have today. Let's talk about places you have studied.
When I was 5 years old, I studied in primary school, but now I am used to studying at Speed Up.
How about we talk about TV shows now?
When I was 5 years old, I used to watch Scooby-Doo, but now I am used to watching The Simpsons.
And to finish this part of the unit, let's talk about transport.
When I was 5 years old, I used to ride a bicycle, but now I'm used to riding a motorcycle.
That is simple, isn't it? To continue talking about habits and routines, we can also talk about the creation of habits. And for that, we just need to use get with used to. But remember that we can talk about habits that we created last year, habits that we create often, and habits that we will create next year. This is important because depending on the moment the habit is created, you have to adapt the get into a got or a will get. Let's start with the past until we get to the future. One situation in life that makes you create new habits is when you have a big chance or a big opportunity. So let's talk about when you changed schools. Let's talk about when you went from high school to university. Let's create an example.
I remember when I started university, I got used not to wearing uniforms, and that was really good.
See, we talked about a moment in your life that you created the new habit of not wearing uniforms every day. So for this case, we use get. But because it was a situation that you created a habit in the past, we transformed get into got. You may also notice that we ended the action with ing. And this is because this was an action or a habit that you created in the past, but it continued for a period of time. So with that same idea, let's now talk about the time we moved houses.
I remember when I moved to the house in the beach. I got used to walking every day along the beach.
And now let's talk about the time you changed phones. Your first smartphone.
I remember when I bought my first smartphone. I got used to seeing my emails on it. It is really faster.
Now let's change to a situation that you want to say that you will create a new habit because of a future change that will happen in your life. Let's imagine that next week you will start school in the morning.
Next week, I will start school and it is in the morning. I will have to get used to waking up at 7 a.m.
In this example, we talked about a habit you don't have today, but you will have in the future. And because of this, we use I will get used to waking up. Now let's change a little bit. Let's talk about you changing your car. Let's imagine that you will change from a car to a bike.
Next month, I will sell my car and buy a bike. My husband and I will get used to traveling by bike every weekend.
This was really easy, wasn't it? Now let's make the final examples. Let's talk about changes that can happen frequently. This way, you have to frequently make new habits. Let's talk about school again.
The teachers vary a lot at SpeedUp, but I always get used to the new teacher very fast.
This one is even more simple. Let's talk about the weather now.
It always gets very cold in the winter. I normally get used to the cold in 4 weeks.
In those examples, we talked about things that always happen, but we can also talk about habits that we are creating now. For example, the phrasal verbs that you learned in Unit 25. We can talk that you're creating the habit of using them in conversations. Let's do an example.
I am using phrasal verbs now. I am getting used to saying them in conversations.
See that you continue to use the word get to indicate that you created a new habit, and you change get according to the time you created the habit. Pretty easy, right? Just to finish this video, let's talk about a group of words that, when used correctly, represent an obligation or responsibility that you have, depending on the occasion. These words are supposed to. And when you use supposed to, you talk about a special action that represents an expected responsibility. So let's talk about a teacher at SpeedUp, for example.
A teacher at SpeedUp is supposed to speak English in the classroom. A teacher at SpeedUp is supposed to have patience with the students.
And you, what are you supposed to do? Create some examples to practice. And because you can talk about old or future responsibilities, you can talk about the old ones saying, I was supposed to, or they were supposed to. The same way, you can talk about future ones saying, they will be supposed to, or I will be supposed to. Now, use the next few minutes to practice. Create some examples talking about what are you supposed to do, what your parents are supposed to do, and what is your friend supposed to do. It's a pleasure helping you to understand this lesson, and now come to SpeedUp and let's talk!